On this episode, we're going to talk about how social media influences the interplay between fashion and consumer trends.
With so many different platforms,
TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube,
and their purposes evolving daily, navigating social media can be, well, complicated. Welcome to the Social Media Sucks podcast from Cubco.
Social media really sucks.
Where we unpack the latest trends and help remove the suck from social media.
Welcome to the Social Media Sucks podcast produced by Cubco. You're tuning in for a dose of marketing and to get what's happening in the ever-changing social media landscape. And today with me, I have two
Distinguished.
Today with me, I have two distinguished senior legendary titans from the fashion and marketing.
I have no industry knowledge about fashion, but we have one titan of industry.
We have two.
No,
right?
it was old. Old was my marker.
I had to add all the nice words for them to give them the confidence boost. Because you're not old. You're experienced, right?
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
That's
so
very nice.
First off, we have Henrik Eppers, who is the owner of multiple fashion businesses and also lecturer at Kia.
Correct.
Yeah. What's Kia again?
That's Copenhagen Business Academy.
Yes, perfect. I just wanted to get that in for the listeners at home who don't know what Kia is.
Yeah, I went to DMUX, so I wouldn't know. Sorry.
Oh, okay.
So,
There's a little rivalry there.
and then I have our CEO, Chris Kubbernus, as always.
Hey, what's up, guys? I'm always here.
Yeah, always here.
I'm always here.
With your opinions.
Yes, just opinions, no facts.
No experience.
No experience, just opinions.
So, Henrik, thank you so much for joining us today. Can you please take us through your experience journey in the fashion industry?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, as you said, distinguished and all, I was there before social media existed. I was there before website existed. I actually joined the fashion industry just about the same time as the internet had its first official trade.
Okay. I want to point out that Henrik is only 47, so it's. I don't know.
Feels very old.
I remember I mean, you probably don't remember pre-internet, but I do.
Of course, I do. I'm from China.
Okay. Okay. They didn't get the internet till last year in China. Right?
I mean, I was late to the game.
But it spread really quickly.
Really fast.
No, so at that time, we were working with the classic sort of forecast, the way that we were looking at trends and tendencies changing, and it was an inside-out perspective. There weren't any including the customer in the journey. It was all about brands, their own sort of self-realization, how they wanted to do. Right. And then now you have it flipped. Today, it's all about customer journey. It's all about understanding what the customer wants, needs, requirements that they have. Focusing on trends and tendencies continuously, looking at the ecosystems that create. You know, so there's so many things that have changed in order to cope within the fashion industry. You can no longer just say, I have a great idea, I have a great design, because you can't live from the innovators and the early adapters. They can give you a boost, but you'll go bankrupt within 2 years. Okay. You need to get to early majority before you can actually start saying, okay, I'll put money in the bank.
Okay. Is that like a big change that you really have to get to?
It's a massive change because, I mean, if you sort of do your segmentations, you figure out who your customer is or who you want to speak to, and you just go about the old way, you would just, push something out there. Right. They're not going to listen. No, okay. You need to find their trigger points. You need to figure out who they are, and eventually, if you have 100,000 customers, let's say Copenhagen and an area, 2% of that is the innovators. You can't build a business of 2,000 people. So no matter how much you want to,
unless you're charging absorbent amounts of money for that particular item.
Yeah, and then I think that's something that you need to sort of tackle is that the luxury industry has nothing to do with the fashion industry. Because luxury is all about branding. And if you look sort of from history, it's the same brands that are luxury brands. The new brands are, commercially charged. They might be premium, but they're not luxury. No, okay. They don't define you. They can't change you in the same way as those sort of historical brands do.
Yeah, I mean, that's the whole point, right? Like, it's because it have so much status behind it, right? Like the Rolexes, the Louis Vuittons, even those have kind of had difficulties also retaining their luxury status, right? There's a big sort of push because many people have become more affluent and like, you know, that's also disrupted them a bit.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that you said like it's kind of flipped a little bit. Would you find it's easy, like, is it easier to spot trends now then because you have the internet, you have social media, you have that customer journey that you can actually like get them involved in it? Or is it like...
Yeah, I'd say it's easier to measure.
Yeah.
Whereas before we didn't know what we were measuring anyways. I mean, it was push marketing, everything you did back then. And now it is all about pull marketing.
Right.
You create messages for people that, you know, have opted into you. And then you're slowly building by word of mouth or by community thinking, you know, trying to do tribal marketing, trying to build something. And of course, social media is essence of that because it's easier to send out multiple messages, and it's also easier when you are, you know, putting money behind it, doing advertisement, to target the customer much better than we did before. You can actually have strategies that in a normal market would just collide, but now they're ambidextrous. You can work with left or right because you can target the customer specifically, and it's personalized marketing.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant point, right? Like you used to have to do more one size fits all. Now you can actually tailor it much better, right? And you don't have these things butting up against each other. So I think
it gives you a lot of options.
Yeah,
and
massive
different
options.
metrics to play in.
Yeah.
But can you tell us a little bit more about the trends in the fashion industry this year? Like what are the current trends ongoing in the fashion industry?
Well, I think the biggest trend right now is also what's just been sort of highlighted by the European Union is about circularity and sustainability. You know, in 2030, there's new goals that every company within fashion that wants to produce and launch anything would have to live up to. And again, 2050, there's new goals again there. So we know that the future dictates that we have to incorporate this.
Yeah.
And of course, that is easier for newer companies because they can align their entire supply chain towards this. They can, you know, sort of...
They don't have that legacy stuff that they have to repair. They can just start from scratch.
And they have a different price point because right now, still, working on sustainable measurements does mean an added cost.
Yeah.
It is more expensive to reactivate or reuse or regenerate a fiber. So unless we sort of get that tackled from the customer point of view, because, you know, there's a lot of clever heads saying that fast fashion is dead, but look at the street.
Yeah,
It doesn't seem like fast fashion is dead, but it means that fast fashion companies would have to take this into consideration and start to incorporate that. And we see it now in hypermarkets where, you know, 30, 40 years ago, for instance, in Coop in Denmark, it was a big thing that they had these sustainable initiatives. But it wasn't a thing that people bought into as such maybe then, whereas now it is becoming a differentiator that, you know, sets them apart from everyone else.
Or it's becoming table stakes. Like it's just becoming the place where people are like, we expect you
exactly.
to be
all
sustainable,
the certified stuff and, you know, mark everything. So.
Yeah, exactly. I'm actually curious, like this is off topic. I know we've got a bunch of questions here, but did you see the thing from Samso with the QR code?
Yeah.
Inside the label.
So just, you mean like that had in the sporting industry where you can see everything, you can identify where it's from, packed, produced, and everything.
That's part of it, but it's also about like what
resale.
Yeah, it's also made for resale so that when you click on it, it actually tells you what was the original price and also what was the fibers and where's size and all that. And then it also auto generates a Facebook Marketplace ad.
Oh, that's nice.
Which is quite crazy, right? Which is like really getting down to, okay, how do we slim the customer journey to actually then hand off this piece and be sustainable in some way, which is kind of cool. What's your takes on that?
I think it's brilliant, to be honest. I think it's brilliant that you conceive that the customer journey is not ending at your retail store or your online presence. It's about continuity, and it's about actually creating something where it becomes more than just a clothing item or a fashionable item, jewelry, whatever. It's all about a statement. And that statement you pass on to the next generation or the next in line. And then it has a different look suddenly. It's a bit more worn. And I think that...
Which is still kind of cool. Like, it still has that vintage feeling, right?
But it creates also a certain standard for the clothing that you're selling, right? Because some clothes, it can't... The quality of it can't sustain long-term wear and tear and use, right? So it also requires a certain kind of production.
I think from that point of view, I'm looking actually more on sort of diffusion of innovation because I mean, yes, the innovators, the early adapters, they will take the new product. They love the new product. But we also have to look into something, economics, macroeconomics, finances. What can you afford?
Yeah.
And if you 2 years down the line no longer want that fabulous silk dress or silk shirt, you can then activate it towards the next owner who might not be an innovator or a early adapter, who might be early majority or late majority, has less money, but also likes it a bit more worn, a bit more edgy, because they are part of a different subculture than the initially intended fashion target.
Yeah.
So I think basically what we're seeing is a completely new setup of commercial activity. Because of digitalization. I mean, we had a classic value chain. You can take Porter's classic value chain. You had, inbound, production, outbound, sales and marketing, and then after service as your core activities. But today, buying, inbound, production, and outbound, that is, if you look at it from a financial point of view, that is your valuable costs.
Yeah.
That's core activity.
Yeah.
So you're changing the entire role. The buying office now has a much more sort of adapt role in the company,
right.
Also towards the consumers, because the buying office very often buys directly from production. Okay. There is no design effect along the way. They'll go out, they'll source it because they can see in digits, it makes sense.
Yeah.
We're selling it really well in black.
Well
everything goes red, then we'll go red.
Yeah.
And it works. And there's, already in 2018, companies that was doing with AI figures that was doing sort of test of trying to circumvent some of the classic value chains and going directly from a computerized intelligence towards buying, towards retailing. And Otto Group in Germany actually did this in 2018. And it was amazing numbers. They had like 90% sale through before reductions, and not many human buyers reach that sort of level. So
but that's because you have all the data there to pick apart and decide, like, what are we doing? And you're not waiting for thousands of retailers to get back to you with the sales numbers from the fall season. It's
exactly,
like, you have it there now, right? Especially if you're direct to consumer, then you're just like, okay, we can make moves super fast and actually like completely disrupt our usual mode of operation, right? And sell a lot more.
I think one of the classic things for us back in the day was when, we would not just wait for the customers to come back to us next time to sort of tell us how bad it went or how good it went. And so we would go out and, visit the stores, but there was a huge bias in that because we could go in and maybe the store owner or the buyer wasn't there.
Yeah.
And we would then meet up with, any of their staff. And if that day they had opened up the store and sold 2 items from that collection, it would be running amazingly.
Yeah.
It was just so perfect. And that were the only 2 items they sold the entire season. So, you would have one sort of reference point in store. You'd done all right. You'd gone down, you visited, you'd seen, you'd take pictures, everything's good. And still data is corrupted. Yeah. Whereas today with social media, with the digitalization, we're seeing adoption theory happening much faster. We're seeing the ability to sort of, cross the chasm. That is always the big problem. How do you jump from one target group to the next? It's becoming easier. Yeah. And it's easier to figure out how quick we make mistakes.
Yeah, of course. That's super nice. I think that is that fail fast sort of thing and move on. And actually, I think, what's your take on then sort of, you could say sort of on-demand sort of fashion in some ways? Like, do you see that being a big trend where people are not necessarily like producing a whole collection or producing a lot of stuff? They're producing it more ad hoc. Is that something you see as
we're seeing it both in bulk and in single units. So, I mean, obviously, you just go down on the street, you will see that more and more tailors are coming back into fashion. Suddenly they were like 20 years ago, they were gone. There was nobody in the image of the city where you'd go in and get it tailored on demand. But you have this big player in China that is now basically on demand. All they're doing is figuring out from categories and data what's wanted,
what's potentially coming.
And then they actually go out and just offer it to the suppliers. They say who's going to bid in on this.
Okay.
So they're flipping the whole value chain. Suddenly the suppliers are actually becoming the sellers.
Right. You're not chasing them to like, hey, we're going to sell you this thing. It's the other way around.
You don't have overproduction because suddenly when you skip beats in distribution. Instead of doing the traditional where you have, from production to wholesale to retail to the end consumers, you're suddenly going to modern or direct, where you can much easier and target the consumption rate.
Yeah.
So that also becomes more sustainable.
Yeah, exactly. Like that should help in the long run. It's like we talk a lot about food waste also with some of our customers. So we've got some customers in food and biotech science as well. And it's like that as well with clothing. It's like clothing waste. We can get rid of those things with a smarter supply chain, a smarter also methodology to actually get the product out there, right? So it's an interesting thing that we're going through right now. And I think, taking it back to social, I think that social, at least from my perspective, is providing a piece of that data puzzle, which is like you can kind of forecast trends, see what's working, also go to consumers, ask them specifically, do you want this in blue or do you want this in red or do you want this in, and then you're actually able to at least poll your potential audience about what do they want.
Yeah, but it's also changing the classic role of marketing. I think anybody that gone from Mad Men and then towards that 2010 and maybe a bit further, they know that sales and marketing are constantly at odds. Because sales want to take all the credit for doing well selling, and marketing wants to sort of take their bit of the action. And before, it was easy for sales to disregard marketing because eventually marketing couldn't confirm or validate that they were actually the reason why something went well. There was a tendency to, whenever they did a commercial, that something would go better, but it wasn't so that you would say, "Oh, remarkable." But today we can follow it completely. From start to end. We know if we skip a beat, if we deduct our Google fund, then suddenly things are going to slide down. You can see it instantly when something isn't working or set up as it should be. And I think that's changing the role of marketing to marketing becoming much more involved.
Yeah.
But it's also needed that marketing becomes even more so data-driven. I mean, marketing is 90% data, if we're true. We do great campaigns, but in reality, we've done a hell of a lot of research to make sure we even do the campaign.
That's what you hope. Sometimes
we still see some
it doesn't go that way, but
but we
sometimes some stuff still gut, right? Like, but that's
where Kia, where I'm lecturing at, that's exactly what we're trying to sort of give on to the students is you got to understand how important data is.
Yeah.
There's tons of ways of building the perfect campaign, and that's very valid. But if you don't understand segmentation theory, if you don't understand how to research your customers to figure out what it is you want, how you split test, not just A/B, but ABC and maybe even D, you have to understand how you create personas, not just on some sort of imagery persona you put up because you intend to sell to that. No, but somebody who's validated through the entire rank. That gives you a much larger chance of actually becoming successful, specifically on social media, because it's so fast. But it's also funny to see how many companies in the fashion and lifestyle industry that still holds on to this sort of glamour image on their social media. Their Gitter on Instagram is perfect pictures. There's no flaws. There's absolutely nothing. And there's no relatability. I mean, even at the best of times when I've had my house cleaned on the perfect day, the sun never shines like that in my house. And the plants never seem to be so prosperous and well nourished. So, it's hard to sort of get to that point. And I think people are getting to a place, or consumers are getting to a place where if they can't relate, then they sort of disregard it. It's sort of we've gotten our own ignorance filter. Just like Google. If you keep posting the same text, then you just get ignored by the algorithm. Whereas I think that's beginning to happen in the human brain now, that we know we're being suckered.
But we at least hope so, right? Like.
Yeah, but I want to challenge you guys in terms of then where does things start and then where does it end? Because the influence of social media and then the fashion industry, when they play together, like, for instance, you mentioning we're going to the more relatable stuff on Instagram because maybe that's a consumer trend, but we also seen that social media can start trends and kind of, influence what then we like. That's the Instagram whole story, is that it's, polish and aesthetics and etc., right? And that influence a lot of trends downwards. So where does it start and end? It's like a chicken and the egg.
So what's the question?
Like, how does social media and the fashion industry influence each other? Like,
well, my experience with it has been that it isn't just like, okay, so here's the thing. I think what you're saying is the influence on the industry, which is that people are looking for more relatability or authenticity, right? So social media in itself is that piece. So like when it comes to also fashion, or at least in my opinion in trends, it's that sort of move towards also more maybe authentic brands and also authentic fashion expression, right? Like there is, I call the Gen Z the also me generation, which is like, here's me wearing this really nice fancy dress, but there's also me wearing a sloppy t-shirt and really ripped jeans and maybe a hole in the ass or whatever. Well, besides your other hole, but and I think that's also a case of like, and people being okay with that. Like they're okay with showing that they've got these two sides. Yes, I'm in a nice black cocktail dress, but I'm also like in grubby clothing. And I think those two things combine to actually show us that a brand can also do all of those things, right? Like a brand can be super fancy, but it can also be kind of also a little bit downplayed, right?
No, I agree completely, but I think the biggest misconception on that is that a lot of brands believe that they have to build brand. And at the end of the day, it's the consumer that builds a brand. A brand can say and do and spend an obscene amount of money, but if the consumers don't see, hear, or understand what's being spoken to them, it can never become a brand. So building a brand is a multitude of strategies that have to be in place. And I believe from the statics that I'm looking at, that it has to be both relatable, it has to be branding, but it has to be in a coherency, as you said. So a normal person don't wake up with a perfect hair and white teeth and everything is shiny. You need to start somewhere. Right. And I think brands need to do the same. They have to look at themselves as you're waking straight up. What's the first thing you do? You run to the toilet.
Yeah.
But
They're
nowadays,
kind of a persona themselves.
Yeah, but if you ask some of the younger generations, what the first thing you do is we take the phone.
Yeah, we check the phone.
And I'm like, I would love to do that, but my body doesn't work like that. Right. So there's generational gaps that you need to consider.
That's true.
If our younger brand, just like you, definitely focus on TikTok. It has had immense good results. Yeah. Maybe not so much in commercializing yet, but in community, it's massive numbers that it's building. And communities is what's building loyalty. And loyalty builds ambassadors. And at the end of the day, ambassadors builds business.
Yeah, that's true.
I think there's just a huge gap. I mean, there's so many great brands out there that have done amazingly ever since they started until now. Santa Claus was never in red and white and with a black belt. No, that was Coca-Cola that invented that. Until then, we had a different take on Santa Claus, but now everybody considers Santa Claus as that person. Right. Nike.
So advertising and media has influenced that sort of cultural icon or cultural
I think so.
pop, yeah.
I mean, if you're really good at understanding what you're looking into, you're changing culture.
Yeah.
But if you're adamant about only having your take on it, so monologue instead of dialogue, then you won't be successful. There will be the odd one that does well, but in general, you need to be able to create campaigns that have a listening factor in it that includes, getting the customers as part of you instead of just continuously speaking to them in a monologue voice that's saying, buy, and you never actually ask, can we service you in any way? Because I think that's what people are hearing, if you don't listen.
Yeah, they want that community. They want to feel like they're part of the brand and also part of the development of the brand in some ways, right? I think that's how a lot of, indie brands is what we call them, the sort of ones that have grown up in social have really succeeded in doing, is like actually bringing their consumers into the fold of the building of the brand and of the even the product itself, right? I mean, that's why I think Kickstarter also has been quite successful with campaigns in not just fashion, but all over the place. I'm curious to see curious to hear from you. What do you think, like the metaverse from a social media perspective will have on the fashion industry? Because we've talked about it often that, will brands be just selling like, here's your Nike shoe, but then here's your metaverse version as well. Like, do you think that's going to happen, or what's your take on what's going to go on there?
I mean, from a retailer standpoint, I would say, no, it's never going to happen. But I think if we look at how the world has changed and how many people that actually live digitally their lives, that, you know, they might go to work, but then they go home and they join their community and they're playing their combat games or entering into these sort of semi-real life worlds, metaverse, if you want to call it. Of course, they want to be personalized even more so. There is an economy in this, and there is something that the more known brands can tap into, and then there's going to be specific brands just for the metaverse that will do really well. And I believe the reasoning for this reality is that we just look at movies. I mean, look at the movies that sort of predicted we would have electric cars or flying cars and whatever. All of these things are here.
Flying cars? I got to get on that one.
It actually exists. It does exist. It's just not in production.
No, exactly. It's just like,
don't say that to Chris. He will Amazon that shit.
Yeah, I do buy everything on Amazon.
Where can I
get a flying car on Amazon? Hey, I'll be the first in line when the costs come down.
I know you are so much an early adopter.
But it's funny to see. I mean, if you look at the sort of future movies that was created in the 80s, that's what we're experiencing and seeing today. Yeah, and it's not like 1-to-1.5 or no, it's 1-to-1. Yeah. It's basically what was predicted. Even design approaches sort of like if we're looking at homes, that's how the homes are looking today. Right, yeah. Much more sparse, much more, you know, sort of modern, clean. Yeah. Whereas you know, other tendencies go in the other direction. But I do believe that the metaverse is going to be a factor for a lot of businesses. And I do believe that bigger brands can gain tremendous assets from it because they can build even higher loyalty. Yeah. I think it's going to be hard for smaller brands if they don't have that sort of indie status where they have a built community. Yeah. But
yeah, we've talked about it here. My prediction is that brands will license clothing. So like, it'll almost become like the music industry had to go to streaming. I think that clothing will also go to streaming. So it'll be like, you know, if you're in the metaverse, you can go to that fashion retailer and be like, I want to rent this piece of clothing for this period of time. Or even, and then they'll pay the designer, they'll pay the brand like 15 cents for every 30 seconds that someone's wearing that piece of clothing in the metaverse, right? I think that's probably where it's going to go, right? Which opens up another avenue for revenue.
It's classic platform economy.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that could be quite interesting. And then also maybe even if you're a famous enough person in the metaverse, then the brand will start paying you, and they'll, for every minute, they'll be able to see, okay, you know, whoever, Kim Kardashian, you were in the metaverse for 4 hours wearing this, you know, dress. We're going to pay you X amount of money, right? So, so I think that'll also be an avenue which also opens up sort of some weird areas. But
I think there's tons of money in digitalization that we're not utilizing yet. I just think it's about maturity. Is the market still there? Are we talking metaverse innovators? I think it's going to cost more to develop it than it's going to be, you know, coming in and creating revenue. I think down the line, it's going to grow bigger and bigger. And we do know, we just look at social cultural factors. We do know that a larger part of society feels sort of, you know, at odds with the norm in the standardization.
Yeah, there's a lot more countercultural stuff going on nowadays than probably in the past, right?
And those people will seek towards something where they can get some sort of relatability, where they can feel as part of something, because we do need that. You know, we're not, as humans, created to be singular. We are created to be a pack. And we work best in packs. We like to go to work and work with good people. We like to, you know, have friends.
We don't like that, do we? No.
We don't have any good people.
You don't have that here?
No. We just come to work. That's it.
Yeah.
I do, at least. I don't know what
like robots.
I don't know what the other people do.
Like robots. Right, Artie? No. Okay.
He's zoned out already. It's like
whatever.
On standby.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, we do have that tribalness, right? And I think it's even more fragmented than it ever has been, because you have these niche communities. You have this, I'm part of this, you know, really weird gamers who only like Call of Duty, who listen to punk rock music, but also wear, you know, tutus on Sunday, or I don't know what the hell it is. But
you're seeing more and more of this on a larger scale. You know, there's very well-known Danish brands that do this. Mikkeller, the beer brand, with their running club. You know, I think it's like 30,000 members on sort of world scale. But you know, you wouldn't put those things together normally, but they do. You know, they have a great time, finish off, have a good beer. Everybody loves it, and it's a community, and it works.
But it's so funny that they put those together. It actually goes to something that you talked about, which is like, how did social media also influence fashion? And also, I think like the collab idea, like where you have a fashion brand and maybe a weird other brand or whatever it is, like coming together, has also been largely a social media construct of some kind, and actually comes from, you know, maybe even influencers collabing with the brand. So then they started thinking, actually, you know what, let's also do, you know, let's, it was the most recent one I saw, wasn't it? Maersk and Puma, which is like, what the hell does Maersk and Puma have in common? But they did a Maersk shoe with Puma, and it's like, okay, and it's been pretty successful, I think. So it's kind of a weird thing, but that's where I'd also say like social has influenced fashion.
You could look at like, you know, from bubbling up instead of just sort of taking the classic from, you know, coming from the top and then filtering down with the little sports shoe. That was social media. You know, it went completely viral, and suddenly they were buying it, you know, offhand for 8,000 Danish, where it was 159 to buy in the store. It was
so crazy.
So trends and tendencies and fashion points can be created in any sector or subculture or you know, mass culture.
There's definitely been a drive towards more like you'd call almost meme fashion in some way, right? Where it's like it's just meant to be ironic in some ways, right? Like the little shoe or whatever, right? Like what did I see? Like it was Oscar Myers.
The sausage.
They like started making clothing, and it's like, who's wearing like sausage clothing? Like why?
Specifically, since it's known as the wiener.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you know,
that's what we talk about when you are kind of in the known, right? Like on TikTok, the communities that have their like, if you know, you know. That's the thing. Like that's the fun thing.
And people wear it ironically to be like almost special in some ways, right? And to kind of, you know, fly their colors proudly. That they're
it's a
Oscar
statement.
Mayer fan.
It's a statement, exactly, that I know this. I'm in this culture and I'm in this community, right?
Yeah, it's almost the same status as, you know, wearing a Rolex or wearing, you know what I mean? It's like it gives that community that particular status. You are the top of that hierarchy, right? So it's super weird, but amazing at the same time. Yeah.
Do you guys see where, you know, some brands that could leverage social media even more in the fashion industry, or just maybe the fashion industry in general? Is there lacking behind on something in terms of how we use social media? I know this is a big question.
I think you spotted it out before, which is like getting more authentic. Like there are so many fashion brands that are still like heavily curated feeds. Like every fashion shoot is super photoshopped and super like well laid out, and they've got their designers and stuff, and they're really like working hard on one single post. I think that there's a lot of fashion brands, a lot of brands in general, that can learn from, okay, should we be more authentic? Should we take down the production value? Should we, I would say, like, I can't mention any specific brands, but I think a lot of them.
I think it's also about the way that we work with it. I mean, a lot of brands, not just fashion, in any industry, work on followers. And why would you want followers? I mean, initially, would you want just followers, or do you prefer followers that actually interact with you, that actually follow you, that actually would spend money with you? That's
what you want.
Yes, exactly. So
but there's a lot of
it's about how superficial do we want to work? Are we just homogenous, or are we heterogeneous? Are we actually going towards being personalized in our marketing message, or are we just trying to create some sort of branding statement, which, you know, by all accounts will be ignored by 99% of all consumers because they don't get it, they don't relate to it. So I think it's not about brands not utilizing the abilities that are there, or for that matter, not opening up enough. But I do still think that a lot of organizations are built in classic matrix form. So the people that are taking the decisions on what contents are created aren't necessarily the right ones. There should be more boundary spanning. They should open up more, remove the silos from the work environment, create more sort of community feeling at work as well, because it is, you know, it is sort of counterintuitive that you create content that doesn't generate anything.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense. You only have one share of voice. You can't keep...
If you were looking at your numbers and you're looking at your data, then you would do the right thing.
Exactly.
You would say like, okay, wait a second, this is not actually moving the needle anywhere. So why are we bothering with this?
But also it's about understanding how the algorithm work. You know, how, you know, with TikTok being a shareability machine that, you know, if you get through the first ring, then it just shares to the second ring and it just goes on and on. You can be yourself. You have one follower and eventually your video could be seen by 100,000.
Yeah.
On Instagram, it's not like that. So there's different tactics. You need to know how to activate accessibility, when you need to repost somebody else's, what does give you those 3 to 4 days where you can suddenly push something out towards that person's followers, and so forth and so forth. And I think that maybe is forgotten. We all know it, working in marketing, that's something that we need to look at, but it seems to be sort of, you know, no, it's more important to create the message and then forget.
Yeah, there's definitely mechanics that I think that you forget sometimes that, I mean, it's good content, but then also you have to really understand the platform dynamics and really understand what you can do there. And I think what I also see, which is a kind of a problem, or not maybe a problem, but the social media is so many channels now. And you might say that, oh, they're the same. Like Instagram is just copying TikTok now with Reels and all this kind of stuff. Yes and no, because you're pointing something out really important, is that they all have their own nuanced mechanics and the way they work and what they like and what they don't. And what I see is a lot of brands are sort of saying, okay, we need one social media manager who's going to do it all. Like they're gonna, and it just doesn't work. It's like understanding how to like kick ass on YouTube is way different than understanding how to kick ass on TikTok or Twitter. Or so you almost need nowadays a channel manager per thing to really, like, if you want to just nail it, you really need one per, because they have to get deep into those mechanics and really understand it if you want to grow there, if you want to do great work there.
Well, I mean, here in Denmark alone, if you speak to the majority of marketing agencies and or companies trying to do influencer marketing or social media marketing, nobody mentions Facebook or Meta, whatever we want to call it. But it's funny, it's still the biggest channel. It's the most effective. There aren't even...
From a paid standpoint.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that's, you know,
organically it's a different story. Unless you're really good, unless you like, listen, unless you're like kick ass on groups and within, you know, community, and you've really got like a solid understanding of that. And also Messenger, I would say Facebook Messenger is quite good, or Meta Messenger, whatever you want to call. But you're right. I mean, it is still the 800-pound gorilla. Yeah. Right. It still is.
And then that's one thing. And then you can go old school and say, but what's even better than that? And then, you know, how many people sign up for your mails? Email marketing is still the best statistically.
For conversions as well. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that also gets ignored quite a bit, right? So there's a big shiny new object sort of with your social, but they don't forget, like, people often forget like how good it is to own that email list or to have that email list.
And this is where it sort of becomes funny for me, because anybody that's worked with data know triangulation is the best way to go about it. Creates the biggest validity, you know what you're looking into or what you're activating. So why not utilize the strategy that includes old school, new shiny object, and the fiscal element? Yeah, it's not about competing each other out. You know, we see this in the newspapers, we listen to it in news shows, whatever. Online is going to overtake brick and mortar. No, it's not.
No, you still need that.
You can't. Yeah. If we look at it, if we had, you know, mail order catalogs in the old school days in the 1980s and before, they were consisting on total, I think it was, and I'm taking out the travel industry here because they completely screw up the numbers.
Do they?
Yeah, because everything in travel today almost is online.
Yeah, you can't get, there's nobody sending stuff.
But if we're looking at the majority of sort of classic consumer goods, the mail orders were doing about 9% of the total order business back in the 1980s, whereas today they're doing about 12.
So it's up.
Yeah, 3% in 40 years. Yeah. And gone online before it was a physical thing that needed to go in through a mailbox. Yeah. So
direct mail, you're also considering that email marketing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
But what I'm sort of looking at is that we're losing focus on omni. We need to understand that what we're doing in one place has a direct implication on something else.
Yes, absolutely.
And if it's not correlated or if it's not aligned, then we'll lose something.
Yeah.
We might agitate someone else or some other fraction of our community. Because they're not 100% alike. People that follow us,
No, and you're not going to catch them all the time on every single thing. I mean, we often say here, I mean, if you catch 10% of your audience on a social media post, that's a good day. That's a good reach. But because you're not going to get that every time. No. So it's really important that you have other touch points that can actually potentially reach those customers. Otherwise, you're missing out on an opportunity.
And is it all about selling? Should we start communicating? Should we start interacting, inviting them into our home, our business? Yeah.
And you never know what triggers them. I mean, like, triggers a sale. I mean, we were talking about this today about the funnel and how the funnel doesn't really exist. Like, it's a construct that marketing people have made to help with ideation, to help with strategy, to sort of guide us in what we're doing so that we're not just, So like, but in reality, the consumer will drop in multiple different places, up, down, move around, like come out of the funnel completely. Oh, I'm back in the funnel. Like the customer journey is so convoluted. There's no point. It's just for us to be able to work on something so that we're not just
silo it a little bit.
Yeah, just to give us something to like go on, because otherwise there's no map. There's just
but it's also about understanding where we are in the classic sort of pyramid, because we say we do strategies in marketing. Yes, we do marketing strategies, but they're tactical or operational. They're never strategic. Because the strategic point of view is, 1 to a 5 year plan.
They get tactical pretty quick, I would say.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't make a marketing plan for 5 years, because at that point the consumers have completely shifted.
Yeah, that's no point.
And if we don't honor that, if we don't acknowledge the fact that we are working in the trenches to understand, map, and revert so that we can get back to the consumers on an immediate level, then ideation dies.
Yeah.
Because we become stale.
Marketing in itself is tactical.
Yes.
Like, it's a tactical part of the business.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think you're right. I think that's a very good point. I mean, I know this is completely off topic, but
no, I think it's now it's on.
We
but
have
are
this.
you going
We
off?
have this discussion all the time because we have a great strategy team, and oftentimes when we're doing strategies for customers, they keep they really want the tactics. They really and I understand that completely. Like we understand that completely. Like, you can't do it in a vacuum. It has to be sort of tactics and strategy have to be married in order for it to actually make sense. Otherwise, it's academic. It's something else. It's not rooted in what you're actually going to do, putting one foot in front of the other. So I think you're right. I mean, you almost have to start saying marketing strategy / tactics.
Yeah.
Because it is that. It has to be. Otherwise, you're just producing nice looking models.
Yeah.
Right. Like, here's how a funnel works. Here's how if it doesn't go to something real, right? Like, very quickly, then it's just.
I think the most important thing, if it's fashion or any industry, is that we maybe take a step back. Things have gone so fast over the last couple of years because digitalization has come in, platform economy changing, the game completely. Because before you were an individual business building individual brands. Nowadays, you can actually build a platform and receive much better, rebuttal from the consumers. But we as marketeers also need to understand that in order to get the consumer, we can't forget the real teachings where we actually made a difference. Now we just need to, translate them into digital activation. And I think sometimes this whole sort of floating or spacious work environment that we're going into makes us forget it. And I think that's hard on businesses. I know it's hard on the fashion industry specifically because you can see it, you can go in, you can follow whatever brand you want to do online, and you're thinking, why? Why would a brand that has great images with relatable models that are talking about sustainability and circularity, why wouldn't they on Instagram, for instance, create a beautiful wall? Why do they only do stories? because stores are gone in 24 hours, and that might actually work against them.
Right.
You know, you're creating great content, but 24 hours gone and it's not there.
So the strategy and tactics married, because it is like literally like the tactic of maybe we shouldn't do all stories, maybe we should be doing something else because it lasts longer. Yeah, but that is also a strategy. Like we're going to focus on the feed. So I totally get what you mean.
Yeah.
And that's the tough part about it. I think even so, like because marketing has become even more tactical, it has become like the engine room of a lot of the business. So
but it's also like I said before, whereas you sort of had the classic value changed, and suddenly, whereas you had 4 sort of major components being all your valuable costs, and then everything else being, you know, your sort of hard knot you can't get out of. It also means that marketeers need to change. Either marketing needs to adapt to some of the teachings and knowledge that we have from the buying department, understanding how those metrics work, or the buying departments will actually overtake some of what marketing is doing, because that's what we're seeing. We're seeing online merchandisers. That's buyers that have understood the metrics from marketing and are now beginning to implement them. It's not marketeers that suddenly understood all the metrics of buying.
That's interesting.
There's a whole new line of industry creating whole new job sections, which is extremely interesting because everyone is screaming for them. Everybody is screaming to get this sort of online marketeer that knows and how we can activate and how we can, optimize stock inventory rates and everything else. And
really,
those are important.
I didn't know that was a big thing, but now
we have to research. Yeah, now we have to get in that space.
Buyers are becoming marketers.
Yeah,
and vice versa.
Yeah,
that's interesting. Okay, but it makes sense. I mean, and also you can use. It's kind of almost coming full circle, right? Where you had classic marketing, which was addressing your market, like what was the the marketing part of it, not the creative part of marketing, but the more hardcore data, like what do we sell, how do we position it, like what markets should we be in, and which segment should we be in, which is the sort of classic marketing. Yeah. So it's very much coming full circle in some ways.
We've gone from marketing mix being, now 10 official letters, still P all the way along. But we started with product. And at the end of the day, that's where we're back. But now we actually have to look at it from the classic 4 Cs. We have to understand what is it the consumer wants. We have to do the ideation in alignment with the consumers. And that will succeed us. We just can't ignore the consumers when we're building a story, because if they don't get it until we go to market, then there will be a long time before they start getting it.
Yeah, and you're just hoping that it'll work.
Yep.
Versus actually having a very good sense that it will.
Yep.
So yeah, great points.
On a last note, where do you guys see the future is headed for the fashion industry with social media?
I think everyone will just be nude. No more fashion.
Okay.
The Emperor's New
Work
Clothes.
from home, but wear virtual clothing. So you'll just
you
is that your dream statement? You're just
yeah.
No,
I mean, like
you like being in the office.
nobody wore pants during the whole pandemic, right? Isn't that? That was just me.
That's just you.
Okay. Anyways, but what I have no clue. I've not studied.
Do you
the
think
industry
Metaverse will have a significant role? I think that's something I feel you lean into often when we talk.
Yeah, I do think that the online space using virtual reality or AR is going to flip the fashion industry, a lot of industries, distribution model on its head, much like the music industry went through. Right, I really feel like they're almost 1-to-1 right now. Like the music industry, and they did the same thing. Also, the music industry didn't know what records were even selling well for a long time until digitalization came in, and they realized like that's how grunge actually became a big thing. It was like, holy shit! Actually, all these records from these bands like Pearl Jam and Nirvana are selling like hotcakes. Now they're on the top 100 Billboard. Nobody knew that until digitalization came through, and I think that's also what's going to happen with the fashion industry. It's like we're gonna see very quickly. Oh, there's this little indie like they're kicking ass. Like they got everyone's wearing that in the metaverse, and then there'll be licensing for that product, similar to licensing of music, and there'll also be some trackers on it, like NFTs or something that actually proves that it is actually that product and not a ripoff. And I also think the the method of getting products to consumers, like the music industry went through, which was like someone could record something tomorrow and have it out on the streets today. For the music industry, like that wasn't available until the internet really kicked ass and social media kicked ass. And I think that's the same with the fashion industry, is that they're going to be able to produce, they're going to come up with an idea, produce it in 3D digitalization, and be able to have it out the door to consumers.
And we have that already.
Yeah.
I mean, what we saw sort of just before the whole lockdown and coronavirus was that the 3D rendering became more and more usable, and a lot of sort of base products were just done in 3D rendering. There wasn't any need to create a sample and take that sort of time where, you send out and then you get it back and you measure everything up and you see if it's the right quality. No, you send it back and they do it again. And then, so all that time has been won. And that means money has been won. Now we can invest it into the consumers or marketing, wherever we want to do. So definitely all the tools are there, and you're seeing more and more brands utilizing not classic, flat pack pictures. It is just a 3D image, and it's 99% spot on. You can hardly see it, and they can they can get small movies where it looks exactly how silk would move, and it's perfect. And we're seeing it coming into the educational room as well. At Kia we are also teaching how you create this in the design process of actually utilizing the 3D, and how that can solve both time and money, because it costs employees to do the old school way. Now you can actually skip maybe a beat there. Time, optimizing your supply chain completely, helping buying in their job much faster out towards their sourcing. And eventually it's going to be faster to the consumers. So it's going to change. So classic image of a collection is, we design it now, 6 months later it's in store. Whereas fast fashion with Sarah's, doing 4 weeks to 8 weeks very quickly when they adapt to some sort of sort of design that they need to take on. And it's just going to maybe pull the industry closer together, whereas there was a huge gap before. And I believe in the metaverse. It's just when it's coming. I think
it's not tomorrow.
No, it has to be.
It's years away. We were probably overestimating.
I mean, what's it called? Sims?
Yeah.
I think my daughter started playing that when she was 8, and she's still playing it 20 and loves it. She loves it, and that is sort of a metaverse, but on a very sort of low end scale. And I think that's we've seen all the signs. They're there. There is a market. There is something, and how that's going to inflict pain or gain on the fashion industry, I can't speculate. I'm not that clever, to be honest.
Predictions, your opinions. That's your opinions. That's
fine. But it is just that's back to my opinions versus facts, right? But I do agree with you. I mean, it is the whole supply chain and the whole method of delivery is completely changed now. And I think you're right. The pandemic did have a large impact on that as well, because you couldn't go out and showcase the latest thing to retailers. You sent them a catalog, online catalog, and they had to go, all right, I'll take 10 of those and 5 of those.
But the funny thing about that was also to see how quickly people adapted.
Yeah.
Because the retailers were, for a short while, oaked. It was tough, because they were going from having open and going into their busiest season to just being told, for the next foreseeable future, you're done. Close the doors. All business could do it. And all these stores that for so long had not included the digital space, that hadn't entertained, they started doing online selling, and it worked. So there is a future. It's just how it's going to be.
But it's so good that they had to get forced into it, because they were laggards. So many retailers were laggards, and then it's like, okay, we have to get on top of this, or else we're gonna lose. We're gonna just go bankrupt. So great.
This was a truly interesting talk, you guys.
Thank you.
I mean, you guys are seniors and have a lot of knowledge. I mean, in a good way. Don't take offense.
No,
So here have it, guys.
I'll take my walker and
me too. It's 4 o'clock. Should we go get some supper?
Yeah, exactly. I just have to take. I think I might have peed in my pants.
It's okay. We have lots of young people to take care of you guys.
This is perfect.
So here have it. Let me summarize how social media has influenced the interplay between fashion industry and the consumer trends.
Yes.
From Henrik and Chris.
Yay.
You guys had so many golden nuggets. So hold on to this. Social media has significantly impacted the fashion industry because the supply chain is not disrupted. We have much more data to measure and help forecast trends and changing the classic role of marketing versus sales. And the on-demand fashion is flipping the value chain so suppliers actually can become sellers, which means that consumption rates can get much faster. And in the areas that fashion brands could do better is on social media is actually to assess yourselves and who you are targeting. The Gen Z, as Chris called them, the me generation, it's okay to show both sides, both the polished and the real. So this really influenced the brand's virtuality. So the brand has to look at themselves as a persona and just be real, because a multitude of strategies goes into building a brand, but ultimately the consumers builds the brand. So try to look away from working in the classic silos and not only focus on creating the message, but also really adapting to the reality from the platforms and then how the mechanisms work behind them. So, and as for where things start and end in the interplay between fashion and social media, the take is that branding can influence and can change culture, but in order to succeed on long term, you have to be in dialogue with your consumers. The advice you guys had to marketeers in the fashion industry that you can take with you is don't lose your focus on your omnichannels. Don't forget to link some efforts to classic digital marketing methods like email and physical, and translate what you know to digital and not only be swayed away by shiny new object that's the digital space. And then really acknowledge the immediate tactics and strategy has to be married because trends and consumers move so fast. So make your models real into real life. Apply that to real life. So the future predictions you guys had, opinions based on, of course,
data, based on data.
Senior experience is that online life will change the way trends and retail perform because of the transparency and fast-growing technology in the digital space. But let's see what happens there in terms of technology. And 3D technology can solve time and money issues and really optimize the whole process from this classic flat pack picture to digital solutions in the industry. And then lastly, we also dropped something with the Metaverse in our podcast, but listen to the whole thing and able to get the scoop of that. So
wow,
here you have it, guys.
That was amazing. That was a good.
You sound really smart.
Did we say those things? I think it was you. I didn't say any of that stuff, but well done. I think we sounded good.
Thank you for my great hostess skills, because today I didn't have my marketing manager with me to take notes, so
That's
I had
true.
to do it all by myself. I'm
good
so
job.
proud right now.
Well done. Give us a like, comment, subscribe to give you some credence.
Me some confidence boost here.
Give you some acknowledgement.
Thank you so much for listening. This was the role of social media in the fashion industry. Stay tuned for the next one.
Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you.
Adios.
This has been the Social Media Sucks Podcast.